Alright, chapter 3, the power of state. It is the mind that maketh good and ill. Maketh good or ill, that maketh the rash or happy, the rich or poor. Edmund Spencer. Have you ever had an experience of being on a roll, feeling that you could do no wrong? A time everything seems to be right. Maybe it's a tennis match when every shot hit the line. A business meeting where you had all the answers. Maybe it was the time when you amazed yourself by doing something heroic or dramatic you never thought you could do. You'd probably had opportunity experiences, opposite experiences today when nothing went wrong, right? You can probably remember times when you messed up with the things that you usually do easily, when every step that was wrong, every door was locked, everything was turned out wrong. I'm sorry about that. What is the difference with your same person? You should have the same resources at your disposal. Why do you want to produce this small results on the time and the fabulous result of the next? Why do you even best athletes have the days when they do nothing, do everything right, and follow them with the days they can't buy a basket, or base hit? The difference is neurophysiology state we are in. It enables you with the confidence of love and the inner strength of the joy, with the ecstasy, belief, with the tap of the greater well springs of the personal power, there are paralyzing states. Confusion, depression, fear, anxiety, sadness, frustration. These leave us powerless. We're all going in and out of the good and bad states. However, have you ever gone into a restaurant having a waitress snarl, "What do you want?" Do you think that she's always communicating like that? It's possible that she has difficulty in life and that she's always like that. But it's more likely that she had a bad day handling too many tables, maybe with assisted by a few customers. She's not a bad person. She's just in a terrible, unreachable state that can change her state, but you can change the behavior. Understanding the state with the key, with the understanding change, with the achieving excellence. Our behaviors resolve the state we're in. You always do the best with the resources available to do us. Sometimes with the find yourself with the unreachable state. But I know that there's been a time in my life when a particular state that I did and said things that are later regretted it was embarrassed about. Maybe you have to be important, but remember these times if someone trying to treat you poorly, thus you create a sense of compassion instead of anger. After all, those who live in glass houses should not throw stones. Remember the waitress of the other people that are not in the behaviors of the key to take charge of their state with us, their behaviors. What if it could snap your fingers and go into the most dynamic, resourceful state at will, a state in which you were excited in your success and your body is crackling with energy, your mind is always alive, well, you can. By the time you finish the book, you're going to know how to put yourself in the most releaseful, empowering state, to get yourself to the disempowering states, whatever you choose. Remember, the key of the power is to take action. My goal is to share with you how to use the states of the lead, the decisive, congruent, committed action. In this chapter, you're going to learn what states and how they work, and where you're going to learn why can you control our states to make other work for us. The state can be defined as the sum of the millions of the neurological processes happening within us. In other words, the sum of the total of the experience at the moment at a time. Most of our states happen with a conscious direction on our part. We see something, we respond to it, going on into a state. It may be the resourceful, useful state, but the unresourceful, resourceful, and limiting state. But there's not too much that most of us do. Most of us, our states happen without any conscious direction on our part. We see something, we will respond to it or go into a state. Maybe be resourceful, useful state, with the unresourceful, limiting state, but not that most of us do in control. The difference between who fails and achieve their goal in life and those who succeed, with the difference between those that cannot put themselves in a supportive state, but those who consistently put themselves in the state that supports them in their achievements. Always, everything that people that want is some possible state. Make it a list of the things you want in life, to do what you want to love, well, with love of the state, with feel and emotion, signal to ourselves, feel with ourselves, based on certain stimuli with the environment, confidence, respect, but they are also things that we create with the produce of the states within ourselves. Maybe we want money, well, don't care about having a little piece of the green paper to adorn with the faces of the sort of the deceased notables. You want the money to represent you, the love, the confidence, freedom, whatever state you think it can be held. Provide so with the key to love, with the key to joy, with the key of the one power of the man self, with the years, the ability to direct his life. It is the ability to know how to direct and manage your states. First key in directing your state with the producing the result with the desire of live life is learning to effectively run your brain. In order to do this, we understand with a little bit about how it works. We need to know how to create the state with the first place, the first centuries. Man has been fascinated by ways of the alter state with us experienced in life that has tried fasting, drugs, ritual, music, sex, food, hypnosis, chanting. These are all things have their uses and limitations. However, they are not going to be. And it shows Dennis the Menace. How come dumb stuff seems so smart when you're doing it? Opened your eyes to much simpler ways, but equally powerful, and in many cases quicker and more precise. If all the behavior the result of the state with the RAM we may have due to the different communication behaviors where in resourceful states we will have when we are unresourceful one. The next question is what creates the state we're in? The two main components of the state. The first is our internal representation. The second is the condition used for the physiology. What and how to picture things as well as how to say things to yourself with the situation at hand, create the state that you're in. Those are the kind of behaviors that you can produce. For example, how do you treat your spouse or boyfriend, girlfriend when he or she comes home from much more than later than promised? Well, behavior would generally depend on the state of the larger you're in when your loved one's returns and when your state is larger degree and determine what you have then representing in your mind as a reason for the delay. For hours you hold the bend picture of a person care about being accidentally, bloody, deadly, hospitalized, or as a person walks in the door you may greet him here with tears or sighs of relief, the big hug of the question of what happened to the behavior spring from a state of concern with however instead of the picture you love the one having a clandestine affair with you. If you told yourself over and over that the person is late simply because he or she doesn't care about your time and feelings that the loved one arrives at home, you'll give him or her different reception as a result of your state one state feeling angry feeling. Use a whole new set of behavior results. The new obvious question is what causes one person to represent the one out-of-state concerns while another creates internal representation that put her in the state of distrust and anger? Well, there are many factors that we have in the model of the reaction with our parents or other models such as they experience. If, for example, when you were a child, the mother always worried when your father came home late, you may also represent the things in the way that worries you. If your mother talked and she couldn't trust your father, you might have modeled that pattern. This, our belief, the attitudes, value of the past experience with a particular person all affect the kinds of representation we will make about behaviors. This is even more important, powerful factor in how you will perceive it represents the world that is in the condition of our pattern of the use of our own physiology. That's like the muscle tension when what we eat and how we breathe and our posture or our overall level of biochemical function, all huge impact on our state. Internal representation, physiology work together in a cybernetic loop. Anything that affects one will automatically affect the other. So changing states involves changing internal representation, changing physiology. If and when you lower your spouse or child, lover, spouse or child is supposed to be at home, your body is a resourceful state, you will probably perceive that the person as being stuck in traffic on the way home. However, if you're for reason physiological state with a greater muscular tension, extremely tired, but if you're experiencing pain with a low blood sugar, you will tend to represent yourself in a way with a magnified with negative feelings to think of it. When you feel physically vibrant and totally alive, don't you perceive the world differently than you tired of and sick. The condition of physiology literally changes the way of the representative of those experience the world. When you perceive the things as being difficult and upsetting, if it doesn't, your body follows the suit and become tense. So two factors, internal representation, physiology, are consistently interacting with each of the other to create the state we are in. And we are in the state we are in determines the type of the behavior. We perceive the control of the director, our behavior, the control of the director, our states, that to control our states, must control the conscious direct and or internal representation physiology. Just imagine being able to be 100% in control of your state at any moment of time. Before we can direct our experience of the life, we must first understand whether we experience with a mammal or human to receive or represent information from the environment and environment through specialized receptors, sense organs, through our five senses, gustation or taste, olfaction or smell, vision or sight, audition, hearing, and kinesthetics or feelings. You must have the decision effect for our behavior primarily. You have the three, these sense and visual, auditory, and kinesthetics. You specialize receptor transmittal external stimuli for the brain through process generalization, distortion, deletion of the brain takes the electrical stimulus, filters it into internal representation. Thus, your internal representation, your experience with the event, with the precisely, with the path, rather than personalized internal representation. The conscious mind of an individual cannot use all the signals being sent. You would probably go into stark raving mad consciously had been since with 1,000 stimuli ranging from a pulse of blood that through your left finger into the vibration of your ears, so that the brain filters, stores information it needs, or accepts the need later, but that always allows the conscious mind to individually ignore the rest. The filtering process explained with a huge range of the human perception for the two people that seem the same with the traffic accident, given the utterly with the different accounts of it. One may have paid more attention to what he saw with another, what he heard. They saw with a different angle with the both of the different physiologies to begin with the perception process. For the first place, one may have 20/20 vision, while the other may have poor physical resources in general. Perhaps one had been in an accident himself and had vivid representation already stored. Whatever the case, the two will have the different representations of the same event, and they will go and store the perception of the internal representation, new filters through which they will experience things in the future. There's an important concept used in the neuro-linguistic programming. The map is not the territory. Alfred Karobowski noted the science insanity. Important characteristics of maps should now be noted. The map is not territory representation, but if character correct, it has a similar structure for the territory, which accounts for usefulness, meaning individuals with internal representation, not precise for the rendering of the event. It's just one of the interpretation filtered through the specific personal belief, the attitudes, value of something called meta programs. Perhaps this is why Einstein once said, whoever undertakes to set himself up for the judge and feel for the truth of the knowledge is shipwrecked by the laughter of the gods. Since we don't know how things really are, but only we have the representation with ourselves, why not represent it in a way that empowers ourselves with others, rather than creating a limitation? But the key to doing successful memory of the management of the forming representation consistently create the most empowering state for the individual. In any case that you may have the thought and these things that you focus on, even with the most successful person can think of it isn't working, going into the state of depression, frustration, anger, or he can focus on all things in the work in his life. No matter how terrible the situation, he can represent it in any way that empowers you. Successful power is able to gain the access to the most resourceful state of the consistent basis. Isn't this difference between the people who succeed and the people who don't? Think back to W. Mitchell, who has what happened and what it mattered. It was very represented what happened. Despite being terribly burned and then paralyzed, he found a way to put himself in a resourceful state. Remember that nothing is inherently bad or good. Value that has how represent it ourselves, that we can represent things in a way that puts us in the positive state, but that we can do an opposite. Take a moment to think about the time we have been in the powerful state. Thus, what we do in the firewalk, I ask you to put down the book and walk across the bed of hot coals. I doubt that you would go up and do it, but nothing soon. It's not something you believe you can do. You may not be associated with the resourceful feelings and states within the task. So when I speak of it, you're probably not going into the state that would support with the taking action. The firewalk teaches people how to change the state of the behaviors that empowers them to take action, produce new results, spite of fear of the other limiting factor. The people who walk on fire aren't different from the way they were when they came in the door, thinking firewalk was impossible. But they've learned how to change the physiology, and they learned to change the internal representation about what they can and cannot do. Walking on fire is to transform something terrifying, something that they know that they can do, and then they put themselves in the total resourceful state, and then from the state that they can produce many actions, results that in the past they have labeled impossible. The firewalk helps people with a new internal representation possibility of things that seemed impossible with the only limitation of their mind, while the other impossibility is really very possible as well. It's one thing to talk about with the power of state, with another to experience. Thus, what the firewalk does, it provides a new model for the people for possibility to create a new internal feeling with a state of association for the people that one makes for the lives better, work better, but enables them to do more with it, even though possible before. that they ever thought possible before. Clearly demonstrated in them with the behavior, the results of the state that they are in, with the moment. For one in moment, they make them few changes with how they represent the experience themselves, with how they can become totally confident, with how they can be effective with action. Absolutely. Obviously, there are many ways to do this. Firewalk is just one dramatic, fun way for the people to rarely forget. Keep producing the result of the desire is to represent the things in yourself in a way that puts you in such a resourceful state with the empowered type, take the type of the and quality of the action of the creative, the desired outcome. Failure to do this usually means failure with the even type, even to an attempt that which you desire. The best people, the half-hearted attempt will produce the like results. If I say you, let's walk on fire, when the stimuli I produce for you, the words of body language go over your brain, where they from a representation. If you picture people who rings through the noses, through their noses, parts of something terrible to the right, people burning at the stake, you won't be very good at the state. In forms of representation yourself with burning your state, it will be even worse. However, if you were to picture people clapping and dancing, celebrating together, if you succeed with the total joy, with excitement, you would be very different. Stay with it. If you saw with the representation yourself with walking healthily and joylessly, if you were to say with it, I was absolutely can do this, and move with your body, if you were totally confident with those of the neurological signals you put into your state, where you would most likely take action and walk. Same is true with everything in life. If you represent with yourself, the things that are going to work for the won't, if you form of the representation, things that will work for the creative, with the internal breath source, for the need, for the produce, the state that will support us and produce the positive, the result of the difference between Ted Turner and Lee, Aishia Ka, and W. Mitchell, other people is the representative of the world as a place where they can produce anything and resolve the true desire most. Obviously, even with the best state, they don't always produce the result that we desire, but when we crave the appropriate state, we crave the greatest possible chance for all our resources effectively. The next logical question is, if the internal representation and physiology work together to create a state in which the behavior spring that determines the specific kind of the behavior will produce the where in the state, with one person with the state that will love will hug you, while another will just tell you she loves you. With this answer, we'll go into the state with our brain access with the possible behavior choice, with the number of the choice with the determinant of our mind of this world. Some of the people, when they get in the gear, they have one major model then of how they will respond. So they may lash out with learn to do watching their parents, or maybe they just tried something and it seemed to get them what they wanted, so they became stored memory on how to respond in the future. Well, we all have the world views made, but models shape our perceptions of our environment, from people that we know, or from books, and from the movie, the television. We form an image of the world, what is possible. In the W. Mitchell cave, the one thing that shaped his life was the memory of the man he knew when he was a kid, a man who was paralyzed, but made his life a triumph. And such, Mitchell had a model help with the representation situation, something that in no way prevented him from being utterly successful. What we needed to be modeling people to find their specific belief, the cover, the representment of the world in a way that allows us to take effective action. We need to find out exactly how we do visualize within their minds, how they do say, and what they do feel. And once again, we produce the same exact messages in our body. We can produce the similar results. That's what modeling is all about. One of the constant in life, the result of always being produced. If you don't consciously decide that what results you want to produce, the representative things accordingly, same in the external trigger, conversation, TV show, whatever may create states that create behaviors that do not support you. Life is like a river. It's a moving. You can be mercy over the river if you don't take deliberate and conscious action to steer yourself in the direction you've been determined. If you don't plant the mental physiological seeds that you want, your weeds will grow automatically. If you don't consciously direct your own minds to stay with the environment that may produce an undesirable haphazard result state, the results of the disastrous, the critical of that, and only the daily basis with the stand guard with the door of our mind, that we know of the constantly representing the things you ourselves, that we must daily weed our garden. One of the most powerful examples of being undesirable is the shape of the Carl Walanda, the flying Walandas. He had performed aerial routines for years with great success, never considered the possibility of failure falling. It was just not part of the mental makeup. A few years back, he suddenly began to mention to his wife that he had started to see himself falling. For the first time, he began consistently giving himself a representation of falling. 3 months after the first started talking about it, and he fell to his death. Some people would say that's a premonition. Another viewpoint is that he gave the nervous system a consistent representation, a signal that he put in the state in support of the behavior following, and he created an outcome, and he gave the brain a new path to follow, even eventually, if it did. This is why it's so critical to focus on life, on what we want versus what we don't want. If you continually focus on all the bad feelings and all the feelings that you don't want and all the possible problems, you will yourself will see the support of the type of the behavior that resolve with the example of the jealous person. No, you're not. You may in the past have produced the jealous state with the types of the behaviors that spring from them, however they are not your behavior. Making these kinds of generalizations about yourself will create the belief that it will govern and direct your actions for the future. Remember that your behavior is a result of your state. With your state is a result of the internal representation and your physiology, both of you, which you can change in a matter of moments. In this path, you have been jealous for the simply meaning that you may have the misrepresented the way of the created state. You can now represent things in a new way, but to produce the new state with accompanying behavior. That remember that we also have the choice of how to represent things into ourselves. If we represent ourselves that your lover is cheating on you, pretty soon you'll find a way. You'll find yourself in a state of rage and anger. Bear in mind, you're gonna have no evidence is true, but you're experiencing in your body as if it were. And so by that time, when the person that you love comes back home with a suspicious anger in the state, how do you treat that person you love? Usually not very well. You may abuse him and attack him or verbally. You may feel bad inside, create some other retaliatory behavior later on. Remember, the person you love may not have to do anything but the kind of the behavior that produces out of such a state that will probably make him or her want someone else. If you're jealous that you create this state, that you can change your picture of the negativity with the images of your loved one working hard or getting to home. The new picturing process will put you in a state where when your loved one does make it home, you will behave in a way that will make him or her feel wanted, will increase the desire to be with you. There are many times when a lover really is doing what they picture, but waste lots of emotion until they find out for sure. Most of the time, it's highly unlikely that true. Yet is just you've created all kinds of pain for both of you, and for what? Alright, the ancestor of every action is thought, Ralph and Waldo Emerson. In taking control of our communication with ourselves, to produce visual, auditory, kinesthetic signals of what we do want, outstanding positive results consistently produce even the situation where the odds of success of the team limited and non-existent. The most powerful and effective managers, coaches, and parents of the motivation are those who, the reps of the circumstances of life, to themselves and to others, a wave of the signal success with the nervous system and the drive with it seemingly so hopeless for the external stimuli. They keep themselves and others in state with a total reinforceful, and so they continue to take action until they succeed. They probably heard about with Mel Fisher. He's the man who has 17 years search for an undersea buried treasure. Finally discovered over $400 million worth of gold and silver bullion. An article I read about it, one of the crew members was asked why he had stayed so long. He replied, Mel just had the ability to get everyone excited. Every day Fisher told himself that the crew to the day at the end of the day with the tomorrows of the day, but just saying that it was enough. That he also said with congruently with the tone of voice, the pictures in the mind, and his feelings every day himself with the state of the he would continue to take action until he succeeded. With his classic example, the ultimate success formula. He knew his outcome. He took the action. He learned from what worked, and if he didn't, he tried something else until he succeeded. One of the best motivators I know was Dick Tommy, head of the football coach at the University of Hawaii, truly unashamed of how people, the internal representation affected the performance. Once in a game against University and Wyoming team was being pushed all over the field. At halftime, the score was 22-0. The team didn't look as though if they belonged for some field with the Wyoming. You can imagine the kind of state of the Tommy's players were in. They trooped into the locker room at halftime, and they took one look of the bow of their heads and sunk in the expression where they realized that unless he changed their state, they didn't have the player in the second half, prayer in the second half. From physiology, they were in, and they would be caught in the loop of the feeling of failure, like failures out of the other state, but they would not have the resource to succeed. So Dick brought out a poster board with a mimeographed article that they had been collecting over the years. Each of these articles described teams that had been behind and similar large margin rallied against the seemingly impossible odds to win against having the players read the articles. He managed to instill whole new belief of the belief that really would come true, the belief of the internal representation created with a whole new neuropsychological state. But what happened when Tommy's team came back with the second half, played with the game of its life, and then Wyoming scoreless for the second half, the winning 27-22. They did it because he was able to change the internal representation of the beliefs about what was possible. Not long ago, I was on a plane with Ken Blanchard, a co-author of 1 Minute Manager, but he has just written an article for the Golf Digest entitled The 1 Minute Golfer. He had hooked up with one of the top golf instructors for the United States with the result of improved his score. He said that he had learned all sorts of useful distinctions, but he was troubled remembering them all. I told him he didn't have the grope for the distinctions that I asked him if I had ever hit a golf ball perfectly. He told me that, of course, he had. I asked him if he had done this only on on many occasions. He said, of course, he had. Then I experienced the strategy of the specific way of organizing his research clearly recorded in his unconsciousness. All he needed to do was put himself back in the state where he had made his all information already, and I spent with a few minutes with it teaching how to get into the state and how to re-trigger it into cue. You'll learn this in Chapter 17. What happened was he went out and played with the best round he'd played in 15 years, knocking 15 strokes off of the previous round. Why? Because there was no power like power of the resourceful state, but he didn't struggle with them to remember. He had everything he needed to. He just happened to learn and tap it. Or remember, human behavior is a result of the state we're in. If you ever produce a successful result, whether you produce with the take of the same mental, physical action you decided with before 1984 the Olympics, I worked with Michael O'Brien, a swimmer that competed in 1500 freestyle. Where he had been practicing. He felt that he would not be really putting his all into gearing up to succeed. He developed a series of mental blocks that seemed to him to be limiting. He said some of the fear of the success might mean that his goal for the bronze, for the maybe silver medal. He was not a favorite swimmer within the goal, but the favorite George DiCario had beaten Michael on several occasions. I spent an hour and a half with Michael, helped him out with his peak performance day with it, and then discovered how to got himself with the more forceful physiologies. When what he had pictured and what he had said with himself, with what he had felt with the one match that he had beaten George DiCario, he began to break down in actions totally mentally, physically, and he won the matches. And when linked to the state that he was in as those time with the automatic trick with the sound of the starting gun firing. I found out that one day he had beaten George DiCario. He had been listening to Hugh Lewis and the news right before starting. So the day of the Olympic final, he did everything the same in actions he'd taken on that day. He won, even listening to the Hugh Lewis moments beforehand, and he beat George DiCario and won the gold medal in a full 6 seconds. Do you ever see the film The Killing Fields? There's an amazing scene with a never forget it involving the kids, perhaps with the 12 and 13, living them out of the whole awful chaos and destruction of the war of Cambodia. At one point, with the utter frustration, he picked up the machine gun, just blew someone away. A shocking scene. How in the world do you wonder does a 12-year-old kid reach out with an point to do something like that? Well, two things. At first, he was frustrated. He could have gone into a state where he tapped in terrible, violent depths of the personality. Second, his lives in a culture so permeated with war and destruction, picking up the machine gun seems an appropriate response. He's seen others do it, and he does it too. In a terrible negative society, try to concentrate on more positive state, but dramatic assumption of how we can do things in one state, good or bad, would never do in another. I'm emphasizing over and over and embedded within you the kind of behavior that people produce is the result state they're in. How specifically respond to the out of state is based on the miles over the world. That is stored neurological strategy that could not have the made of the Michael O'Brien win the Olympic gold medal. He had worked most of his life in the strategy, the muscle response, and so forth. But what I could do with this, find out how he could summon them the most effective reach for the success strategy for the key minutes for the needed him. Most people take very little conscious action directly their states. They wake up the depressed, they wake up with the energy, with the good breaks lift them up, with the bad ones break them down. One of the difference between the people in the field of how effectively they marshal their resources is most clear with the athletics. No one succeeds all the time, but there are certain athletes who have the ability to put themselves in the resourceful state almost like you, who almost always rise with the occasion. Why did Reggie Jackson hit all those October home runs? How did Larry Bird on Jerry West develop the uncanny ability to hit all the shots, hit the buzzer, and were able to summon upon them the best when they needed it and when the pressure was greatest? State change is what people are after, but they want to be happy, joyous, ecstatic and centered. They people of mind with the trying to get away from the state that they don't like, but they frustrated, with they angry, upset with the bored, so they were most people do. Well, they turn on the TV, so it gives them new representation. They get internalize over the new or something and laugh. They're no longer in frustrated state, but they go out, they eat, but they smoke a cigarette, take a drug, one or more pods with the nose, or they might extra. The only problem which most of those approaches is that result is not lasting. When the TV show is over, they still have some internal representation about their life. They remember that them feeling bad again after the exercise of the drug, food or drug is consumed. They now have the price to pay with a temporary state change. With the contrast of the book will show you how the direct change your internal representation, physiology without even external devices, which may many times create additional problems in the long run. Why do people use drugs? Not because they're sticking the needles into their arm, but because of their life experience. They don't know any other way to get into the state of it. I have kids who have the hardcore drug user kick that have that after the firework because they were given the more elegant model of how to achieve the same high. One kid who said that he had been on heroin for 6.5 years finished the firework and told the group, "It's over. I never felt anything of the needle to even come close to what I felt with the other side of the coals." That didn't mean that he had walked fire regularly. He just had a regular reaction with the new state of doing something that thought was impossible to develop a new model of what he could do to make himself feel good. People who have achieved excellence with the mastery of the tapping into their most resourceful part of their brain that separates them from the pack. The key thing to remember from the chapter in your state with the awesome power that you can control, that you don't have to have mercy or whatever comes your way. There is a fact that determines the advance how you will represent our life, your experience of life. The factor filters away with the representative of the world to ourselves. The factor determines the kind of states we will consistently create in certain situations. Called with the greatest power. Let us now investigate the magic of the power. And that's chapter 4, to the birth of excellent belief.